3 years after the Dobbs decision, we're watching something remarkable. Planned Parenthood centers closing their doors in states across the country. In Indiana and Michigan, facilities have shut down, sending a clear message. When the abortion industry can't rely on taxpayer dollars, it struggles to survive. But in the post-Roe landscape, victory is never the end of the story. Even as we celebrate these closures, new challenges rise. Court battles to force taxpayer funding of abortion, political leaders declaring abortion life-saving, and laws that quickly expand its reach in other ways. Today, we're joined by two women who've been in the fight for life for decades. Jodi Smith from Indiana Right to Life and Lynn Mills, Director of Pro-Life Michigan. They've seen firsthand how far we've come, and they're sounding the alarm on the battle still ahead. From the victory laps to the warning signs, from the courtroom to the statehouse. We'll dig into what these closures mean and why the fight for life in a post-Roe America is far from over. This is Exposed: Abortion in America, Season 4, Post-Roe: The Next Battle. And you're listening to Episode 5. When Planned Parenthood closes, what comes next? Today's guest, Jodi Smith, has been on the front lines of Indiana's pro-life movement. Through court battles, legislative victories, and now, what can only be called a historic shift, the closure of a Planned Parenthood facility right in her community. She serves with Indiana Right to Life, one of the most effective and forward-moving state-level pro-life organizations in the country. And she's here with us to walk through exactly what happened, why this facility closed, how it continued to skirt state law with abortion referrals, and what this moment means for Indiana and for the nation. This isn't just a local story, it's a glimpse of what's possible when the industry is forced to stand on its own. And it's a reminder that when life wins, real help rises. Jodi, welcome and thank you for being with us. A really interesting place to start is to start with the latest news from your area, which is that a Planned Parenthood location just shut its doors. So what happened? You're on the ground. Tell us what happened. What was the tipping point? What's going on?
Sure. Let me, in order to tell you the whole story, first and foremost, it was the Evansville Planned Parenthood that closed. And one of the really exciting things about that is we have a Right to Life affiliate that's in Evansville that has been praying for the center to close for so many years. And when you see something like that finally happen, it's just one of the most exciting things. You know, a lot of times you don't get to see the fruit of all your years worth of prayer. But in order to really understand why Planned Parenthoods are closing in Indiana and kind of the background, we need to go back before Roe was overturned and just give you a little bit of information, because Indiana's a little bit unique in some of the things that we've done and the ways we have made abortion illegal in our state.
Well, sure. Take us back there then. We'll go with you.
In 2012 is when we first defunded Planned Parenthood, and we were able to, as a state, Mike Pence was our governor then, and we worked very hard with our legislature, and we were able to actually defund Planned Parenthood. But we worked very, very hard, and we were able to defund it. But that was the beginning. So back in 2009, when we first started enacting very strict rules and regulations about how abortions had to be done. At that time, of course, they were done in Planned Parenthood centers. And so we had very, very strict rules, some of the strictest rules, some of the strongest informed consent. We had a lot of things going on. And in 2009, we had 5 close. Then in 2016, after the defunding part, and that all got into play, and more strict rules, we had 3 more close. And then in 2022, after Roe, we had 3 more close. So for Indiana, it's been an attrition. That doesn't even count all the ones that merged together, where 2 would merge into 1 or 3 would merge into 1. So we have been seeing Planned Parenthoods close for a long time. And it's because of lots of reasons. And the way that they talk about it, of course, is financial pressure, declining patient numbers, legal battles. They talk a lot about, the reasons for having to close in Indiana. The real reason is because we have 239 federally qualified healthcare centers and rural clinics to 11 Planned Parenthoods, and now it's only 10. So that's a pretty big, dramatic difference between Planned Parenthoods actually providing health care, quote unquote, because we know they have never really provided health care. They have provided abortions. And then when they could no longer provide abortions, they had no way to sustain their centers.
Yeah, Jodi, this is a phenomenon that's happening across our country right now, even in blue states, which is so interesting. So what you're talking about that you guys saw in Indiana even predated what's happening with the federal defunding. So it's really interesting because I kind of feel like what you're sharing with me is what we're now seeing happen across the states, almost in similar ways. You're talking about consolidation. I saw a news report the other day, Planned Parenthood saying that we have to quote unquote consolidate, didn't want to say closures, but consolidation. And then, we're seeing other places close. We have a tracker going right now at Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, where it seems like every week there's more to add of Planned Parenthoods closing. If they were really so essential to women's health care, then why do they have to rely on taxpayer funding just to keep their doors open?
I know, it's just crazy. And, the clinics and the opportunities that we have for women to receive what supposedly they gave, they can get at either completely free or even a lower cost than what they could get it at Planned Parenthood. Mm-hmm. So they can't even use cost. We have everything that they supposedly do towards healthcare, which we know they really don't do things towards necessarily health care, but they can get them someplace else for either a better price in a better environment, and where it's truly presented as health care and not as turning them towards abortions. When they closed down the clinic in Evansville, and I'm sure you've seen other statements like this, but they said they're operating in rapidly shifting healthcare environment. And, I think that the rapidly shifting healthcare environment has a whole lot to do with what we determine as healthcare and what is, quote unquote, abortion encouragement. Mm-hmm. So even after we outlawed abortion in the state of Indiana with just a few exceptions, and we closed the abortion clinics at every Planned Parenthood, we have abortions have to be done at the hospital in Indiana, they still thought that they were going to get a part of that because they had some of the doctors and, they were going to do the pre-ops and all that, and we were able to stop all of that. So Planned Parenthood really has no opportunity to be involved in abortions in Indiana at all, except to make referrals. And of course, they were referring to places, Illinois or Ohio or, wherever. And in fact, the sad part is, they basically pay people, to go up and have abortions. But what we have in place and what we tried to do prior to Roe being overturned, and we were blessed that we had so much available, was to say, hey, we have much better options. So we've got all the pregnancy resource centers. We've got, our legislature funded lots and lots of women's health care. And so that's where, the numbers are just stunning when you look at the fact that there's 239 federally qualified centers, and that doesn't count a lot of the private ones, to 10 Planned Parenthoods. Right. Why would they need to go to Planned Parenthood at all?
That's a staggering statistic. I mean, really, when you sit and think about the fact that much of a disparity of how many, community health centers there are out there that offered the same services without the abortion.
Exactly.
You're a good example of why, Indiana has very strong protections for babies in the womb and their right to life. So somebody might hear that a Planned Parenthood is closing in your area and say, well, what does that matter if it's in Indiana? But you brought up a really good point about abortion referrals. They're still trying to connect women to abortions, and end the life of that Indiana citizen, of that child.
They are, absolutely. And we're working on, every way possible. That type of legislation is hard, finding ways. And the pill abortions, of course, are just atrocious. And we know that Planned Parenthood is providing, the pill abortions via mail. And if they're not the actual person on the label, they are working with others that are, and we know that, and we're working very hard, as of course everybody is across the country, to try to find a way to stop those pills from being mailed. We have, again, the strictest of laws. A woman cannot take the pills for an abortion unless they're given by a physician in a hospital. They have to have an ultrasound. They have to have a full exam. They actually have to be pregnant. It's all kinds of insane things that have happened. We have complications reporting, but we still can't stop those pills from being mailed from someplace else.
Right. Well, so getting back to the brick and mortar Planned Parenthoods on the ground in Indiana, do you know how many are left, or how many? 10 are left?
10 are left in the whole state.
Got it. So explain to our audience then, do you see this as a victory? The Evansville closures, the continual closures?
It's a phenomenal victory. It's just, we're so, so, so grateful. Again, we've always known that if you could hit Planned Parenthood in their finances, follow the money, right? That we would be able to close Planned Parenthoods, or Planned Parenthoods would close, and we would be able to provide better, high quality care for women. And whether that's, cancer screenings that they say they do, but they don't. When you call and ask to get a cancer screening, you cannot get a cancer screening at any of the Planned Parenthoods in Indiana. They refer you. When you ask about, for example, adoption counseling or anything like that, you can't get those services. They're not available. They just pretend that they are. And I know, because I've done hours and hours and hours of undercover calling, trying to find out, what I actually could get at a Planned Parenthood. So when we went after them from the legal perspective and, just again, providing much higher quality care by people that really do care about not only moms and pregnant moms, but, women and women getting high quality health care, we don't need Planned Parenthoods, and that is beginning to show, and women are getting the memo that they can go someplace else and that they don't have to go to Planned Parenthood. Their advertising is not working anymore. And even when they're trying to reach out to the poorest of the poor, or folks that used to think that was sort of their only option, they aren't buying it. Mm-hmm. They just aren't buying it. And even when they were doing abortions, I will tell you that Planned Parenthood had a terrible time getting abortionists. And, they were coming from all over the country. They're sharing abortionists, all these kinds of things. It's just, we really, really are seeing a major shift.
So, Jodi, what kind of words of encouragement would you share with other pro-life advocates like yourself who are in states where Planned Parenthood is just still clinging to power?
I think that the more we provide an alternative, when we are providing compassionate health care, we are providing services with hope and help, really compassionate, because they aren't super nice at Planned Parenthood, and they aren't telling you, any encouragement to get out of poverty, to, help with all kinds of other things that may, practical help, diapers, clothing, for babies, all those kinds of things. That's not what they're doing. So when we provide alternative options for women, and when we continue to try to pass the strongest legislation, that we can, that women should not be duped, and that you do have choices. Women have choices, and that choice is not just, here, we'll pay you to go have an abortion, we'll give you, travel vouchers, blah, blah, blah. There are other options, and they are compassionate, and they care about the woman, not just today, but 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line. So I think we, across the nation, and yes, I know there are blue states and red states and, states that are more successful, less successful in what they're doing. But the more we're able to offer these compassionate options and other alternatives, the less we need Planned Parenthood. And I think they'll be a thing of the past soon.
Our guest today is one of the most determined watchdogs of the abortion industry anywhere in the country. Lynn Mills, director of Pro-Life Michigan, has spent years exposing and challenging the abortion lobby. She's been at the forefront of Michigan's pro-life movement through some of its toughest and most pivotal moments. Today, she's here to help us put a major development in perspective. A Planned Parenthood closure in Michigan in the shadow of a new constitutional amendment that enshrines abortion on demand in the state. We'll talk about the political climate shaped by leaders like Governor Gretchen Whitmer and how that's impacting life on the ground in Michigan for advocates and families. Lynn, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here. How significant is this Planned Parenthood closure in Michigan? Talk to me about the closures that are happening in your state, especially given what's happened with y'all in the recent past, and just abortion being cemented into your state constitution. What is that like to see these two things happening?
Well, at the turn of the year, the new year, 2025, as we monitor everything and I get my morning alerts here, we noticed that the workers of Planned Parenthood were unionizing. Now, I don't try to keep the pulse of what is going on in the nation. That's not my job, being Pro-Life Michigan. I just saw things happening here in the state and thought, this is really odd that they're unionizing, and they only unionized certain people here. And the next thing you knew, by April, they were closing for abortion. I call them dumps. I'm sorry if that's not respectful, but what they do isn't respectful. And we just couldn't have been happier. The bad thing is that they have an exit strategy, and that exit strategy was they opened a clinic that was online, and that is making up for these 4 places closing, unfortunately.
So Lynn, let me stop you there then. So where there is a victory to be celebrated in the brick and mortar and these places being in the community and trying to, lure people in there, that we can celebrate. However, what it seems like is that they have converted that into putting the energy of digitally targeting people. And do you think specifically with abortion drugs?
Yes. It was really odd that Planned Parenthood moved out of the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, where they were the only abortion provider, and they've not moved into a brick and mortar. We have so many people since our Prop 3 failed coming into the state just to do online abortions. it's insane the amount of female abortionists coming here who are licensed in other states who are not here physically. It's just insane what's going on in this state. We have over 60 to 100 licensed abortionists in this state right now.
So, Lynn, since this podcast season is all about what is different post-Roe, post-Dobbs, what are we seeing now? What, in your opinion, are some of the largest things that Michigan is experiencing that's different from post the removal of Roe? And you can include, if you want to share just a little bit about Prop 3, include, what you're seeing, what happened there as well.
Well, number one, we lost the House and the Senate, and during that time period, we lost all protection for women. I think the only thing we have is you cannot get an abortion if you're a minor. So absolutely everything we had in place, such as a nurse for the state of Michigan under licensing and regulatory affairs, would go in perhaps once a year, once every other year, and do an inspection. These abortion dumps had to be licensed under the state of Michigan. It's all gone.
So you mean they don't even get licensed anymore?
No, it's gone. Everything's gone. So if you want to call that a protection to me, the only protection for a woman is to not have an abortion. So I want to be really clear about that. Mm-hmm. That being said, I want to give props to Right to Life in Michigan. They worked very hard for an omnibus bill under Ed Rivet. God bless them. And it was in place for 10 years. It was 10 glorious years. And during that time, we were able to watch and see and have many abortion dumps closed down because they did not want to step up and have proper cleansing of the instruments, proper bathroom situations, and all of that was taken away. All of it. And so they can do whatever they want now, and they are gunning towards not even having licensed, I hate to say this, physicians do it. Remember back in the day, I don't know how old you are, I'm a little older, when they say, we need medical doctors doing abortions. You don't want back alley hoo-hoos doing this. They are going towards back alley hoo-hoos being able to do it legally.
We have seen that, Lynn. Lynn, I've talked about that quite a bit actually here recently, which is everything is you need to self-manage this abortion in your woman alone, doing this to her own child in the privacy of her home. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to see any doctors. I mean, how quickly they've changed.
Right. And I was just up on the Planned Parenthood of Michigan website, specifically the Ann Arbor one. They want to charge you $168 for a pregnancy test. How do you even know where that pregnancy is if you're not going to do an ultrasound? How many of these poor women are ending up in the ER because their tubes are busting because that's where the pregnancy is? Where is the control? It just blows my mind that it is not about women. It is about the bottom line. And so it's horrible what is going on here.
Michigan is very interesting in the context of this conversation because a lot of the things that you're saying come from the top, right? The governor. And I would submit that you guys might have one of the most pro-abortion governors in the country, if not the most, at least one of the most pro-abortion governors. I mean, she acts as if it's a part of her personality. I know she's called abortion, quote unquote, life-saving. She's ignored pro-lifers getting assaulted. We have in Michigan, there's forced insurance payments for abortion. Can you talk to me about your governor, Gretchen Whitmer? She's revolutionized in the worst way Michigan oriented towards abortion.
During COVID, you couldn't buy paint, you couldn't buy seeds, you couldn't buy gardening anything. She tried squashing us.
I mean, I think that's an important legacy for people to recognize, which is she shut down during COVID times all of the things except abortion centers as one of the quote-unquote urgent things that must stay open, according to her. I mean, showing and broadcasting where her priorities lie. Under her, Michigan now forces insurance coverage of abortions. How do you think something like that affects a state's political and cultural climate?
Oh, they're going in there like it's you're going to get pop at 7-Eleven. People come to look at it, as they have over the last 50 years, as a necessity, as something they can just get willy-nilly all the time. So, and as I was researching one particular file over the weekend that spans probably 25 years with Gretchen Whitmer, we in Michigan used to have Republicans in office. And as I look at the old LARA, that's Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, excuse me, we could get things done under a different Republican, a different Attorney General. And I see these old, and I don't mean old people, but names under past administrations. And where are they now? They shipped investigators off to the Social Security Department and another one off to being an administrator at nursing homes. And these two people in particular used to investigate the abortionist, and they used to get things done. And right now, nothing is getting done. Michigan loves abortion, and we can't get any abortionist sanctioned for anything, and there are grave violations against the public health code.
It sounds like in Michigan right now, this state has a culture of viewing abortion like taking tonsils out, not the ending of a human life. When your state has that posture, what does that do to the way you view humanity, the sanctity of life, just the culture in general?
Well, it trickled down probably. It's, I don't have time to, that's a very good question, Emily. I'm too busy fighting it to stand back and look at everything else. It's horrible here.
When did you notice, because I know you've been really at this for a long time, when did you notice there was a shift in Michigan? Has it been a while or has it been recent?
We used to be able to get things done. The shift happened with Gretchen Whitmer. Elections have consequences. And when she came in, it got worse. It did. When we write the allegations against the abortionist, unless it's an egregious, really, 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 and it has to be really botched abortion, nothing goes anywhere except if an abortionist lies on their application, except if an abortionist doesn't meet the deadline getting their answer to an allegation in. Those are the exceptions. That's it. It's technical details. Used to have to report abortions, and there were times when we would see 28 weeks come back on the state reporting.
Okay.
And it's like, where did this happen? And we were pretty sure it happened in Ann Arbor at the hospital there.
So now there's no reporting? So you don't have any understanding of the data at all about what's happening on the ground in Michigan?
Nope. Same with Minnesota. Minnesota used to have some of the most wonderful reporting data, and theirs is gone too. And how easy is that for them to avoid people like us in understanding what was going on?
Well, Lynn, I know there's a lot of stuff that's going very wrong and in the wrong direction in Michigan, and I really hope that people that listen to this can use your state as a case study about what happens when these dangerous amendments pass in states. But what would be your message to other pro-life Michiganders about where the fight goes from here, and any words of encouragement?
Well, first of all, pray. Second of all, get out there. Get out to an abortion clinic, dump. Even if you're alone, and if you can't speak, because a lot of people have told me they don't feel they can call out to a woman, have a sign. We have one gentleman that goes out twice a week, and he stands there, and his sign simply says, God loves you, God loves your child. There was a woman here who was taken into an abortion dump in the downriver area of Detroit, and she was tricked by her mother and held down by her mother and the abortionist, and she thought, it said woman care. She thought she was going in for prenatal testing. She said, Lynn, if there was one person out there with a sign, I would have known it was an abortion clinic, and I never would have gone in, and that my baby would have been alive today. So that thought stays in my head. If you can go out there and stand with a sign, if you can go out there and somebody sees you and knows that it's an abortion clinic. Heck, a couple months ago, I'd been in a car accident, had nothing in my car, all my lid. I had just gotten my car back, and I was driving by the Planned Parenthood, and I saw a couple standing on the sidewalk, and I pulled over. The wife couldn't speak English. The man spoke broken English. And I said, are you here for an abortion? He said, yes. I said, do you want it? And he shook his shoulders. I called Guadalupe workers. They answered immediately. That's a local Detroit pregnancy center.
Mm-hmm.
They got them in that day because I was obedient to the Holy Spirit. They listened. Guadalupe workers, God bless Alicia, got them in. That baby is living just because of a few simple acts. Not because I'm some hero or anything. I was just driving by. I didn't plan on anything. Had no literature. People, obey your inner instincts and just have a crisis pregnancy center number in your phone. Somebody who will get them in ASAP.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much. So I'm really glad that we could talk to you about this and the encouragement to other Michiganders about what they can do and listening to their instincts to get out there and help. It sounds like the fight is more important than ever right now in this post-Roe landscape. So I'm just really thankful for your expertise and your advocacy.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
That's all for today's episode of When Planned Parenthood Closes, What Comes Next? But the fight and the conversation doesn't stop here. In our next episode, we'll take you behind the headlines for another critical story in the post-Roe landscape. Stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed and join us as we continue to shine a light on the battles for life happening right now in America. That's next time on Exposed, Abortion in America, Season 4, Post-Roe, The Next Battle. Until then, keep standing, keep speaking, keep fighting for life.